Hello, and welcome back to the Ninox Learning Channel. My name is Andy. I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer. And in this class, we begin the 600 level series of Ninox training classes. Now, in the previous series, the 100, 200, all the way through the 500 series, we've talked about specific features and functions and operations in the Ninox system. We've talked about programming. We've talked about building databases and tables, how to use fields. We've covered a lot of topics on using the Ninox system from a pieces and parts perspective. Well, now in this new series, our 600 series, we're going to begin putting those pieces and parts together. And we're going to start talking about how to build specific types of solutions. In this class today, we're going to build a photo album. And we're going to build it in a way where you can use this photo album template, if you will, in any of your Ninox database solutions. In future 600 series videos, we're going to build other kinds of templates and other kinds of solutions that you can use by themselves, or you can use them as the foundation, the building blocks of your own personal customized solutions. And if you have ideas for things that you'd like to see us build, or for solutions or templates that are of interest to you, go ahead and shoot us an email at support@nioxus.com, and you never know, your idea may very well be our next training video. Today, let's get started building a photo album. I've started a new database. This database can be downloaded from the Nioxus member portal if you'd like to download it and follow along, or just download it and integrate it right into your existing Ninox solution. But we're going to start by creating a simple table. And we will call this table Inventory. And for this example, we're going to play the role of a clothing manufacturer. We manufacture all sorts of men's and women's suits and clothes, and we want to build a database that allows us to track all of the inventory, and a crucial part of each record is going to be pictures of that inventory. So this is going to be our inventory master table, and we want to have fields with all of the basics, for instance, the item number and the item description. And of course, we would have cost and price and lots of other things, but what we really want to focus on are the images. We want to have a photo album of images. So I'm going to go ahead and create 6 image fields, and we'll just save our changes. That'll be our table for right now. Let's go ahead and look at that table and bring up a blank record. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to do except maybe skinny up the item number and description. I'm going to go ahead and grab a space and put that space right there to force all of my images down to the second line. I'm going to drag that out a little bit, pull this back a little bit. All of the things that you've learned how to do in Ninox in our previous training classes. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe size up these pictures a little bit, so each one of them is a little more of a portrait and a little less of a landscape. And you can do this with the image fields in your databases by simply selecting the field, grabbing the sizing handle, and on the side or on the bottom, dragging left or right, up or down to size out your images. Here I have a pretty good layout where I can have up to 6 images on a single page or in a single record of my photo album. This works, but this is not the best way to build a photo album. We see this all the time in students in our classes, and we look at some of our clients' databases. They know they want to have a lot of images. They're not exactly sure how many images each table record will have, so they'll put together 5 or 6. Sometimes we see even a dozen or as many as 20 or 30 image fields put into the data model for a table and put on the screen in the fashion you see here, the idea being we'll always have space to add pictures. Well, there's a couple of problems with this. First of all, image fields take up an enormous amount of space on the screen. Just looking at this screen in front of us, we only have 8 fields, and we've pretty much taken up the entire amount of real estate on the screen. So image fields take up a lot of space, and if left blank, that becomes wasted space. So for example, if we have 6 image spaces in every record in this table, some records might have 6 images, some might have 1, 2, or 3, but where we have blank spaces, we will have wasted space and made our database unnecessarily large by using image fields or by placing image fields on the screen that did not get used. Well, there is a better way, and that is to create a photo album. Imagine a photo album where each page contains 1 image, and you can have an unlimited number of pages, but every album will only contain the exact number of pages necessary for the pictures it is holding. Some records might have a photo album with 2 or 3 pictures. That photo album would have 2 or 3 pages. Other records might have 30 or 40 pictures, and those photo albums would be significantly larger. This is what we call elasticity. The ability for certain tables and records to expand and contract so they are always exactly the size we need them to be. Never too big, taking up too much space, and never too small, making it impossible for us to store the data that we want to store. So let's go back and change a few things. First of all, I'm going to get rid of all of these picture fields. I'm going to delete them. Okay, now that we've deleted all of those image fields that we had, we're left with our inventory table, which simply has 2 text fields, 1 for item number, 1 for item description. Let's go ahead and close that out, go back to our desktop, and create another table. We'll go into administrative mode, click on New Table, and let's call this one Photo Album. And there are just a few fields necessary. Of course, we need an image field to hold the picture. We might want to have a field for date to know when the picture was taken, and for the same reason, maybe a time field. And then finally, I'm going to add a multi-line text field to be a description or any comments about this particular image. This is all we need for our photo album. And I just am going to add one more thing. We're going to add a link back to the inventory table, and we're going to make this link a parent-child link, where the inventory table is the parent of the photo album table. So our data model now looks like this. Inventory is the parent, photo album is the child. The idea being that every record in the inventory table may optionally have photo album pages attached to it, but it only will have as many pages as it needs, and if there are no pages necessary, then that record would have no photo album attached. This is an elastic design that allows our photo albums to be as big or as small, or in some cases non-existent, based on the exact needs of the record that we are attaching the pictures to. So let's see how this is going to work. I'm going to go into my inventory table, and I'm going to create a new item. I'll exit administrative mode, and we are going to call this MTC001, and that is going to be a men's formal tailcoat in black. Now what I want to do is let's format the fields, the columns that appear in this embedded multi-record child listing. I'm going to select the child listing itself and go into Edit Columns and specify the date, the time, the description, and the thumbnail of the image itself. This will allow us to see for every image the date and time it was taken, a description of that image, and a small thumbnail. And we can go ahead and size this up because we don't need our date or time fields to be quite that big. We will want to have a nice big space for our description, and then we'll have the thumbnail, just a small thumbnail of the image off on the right-hand side. We'll save those changes and exit administrative mode. We have defined the parent record. This is the inventory item MTC001, men's formal tailcoat in black. Let's add some pages to the photo album that is attached to this inventory item. we'll click the plus sign just above the child multi-record listing. I'm going to go into administrative mode real quickly and just change this format to be a little more picture and a little less landscape. I'm going to size these fields up, and then just to make the screen look a little more attractive, I'm going to put this multi-line text field right there. So this is a nice looking screen, easy to see. And let's go ahead and add some images. I'm going to add 5 images to this particular inventory item. Image number 1 is going to be a picture of a gentleman wearing a black tailcoat, and we'll go ahead and put in the date and the time of this particular image. And then I'm going to add another one. We'll call this tailcoat 2 with the date and the time. Let's grab image number 3, noting the date and time. Image 4, which is a close-up detail of those nice silk buttons. And finally, image number 5, which is going to be a view of the back of the tailcoat. Again, noting the date and the time of the picture. Now, I didn't add any descriptions, but we could just as easily go in and we could say that this is a men's Victorian tailcoat, size extra, extra large. And maybe picture number 2 is the same thing, but this is a size medium, shown with gold paisley vest. And then finally, this will be the rear view. So we have the descriptions and the date and time to accompany each of our images. And here we see the thumbnail images right there. Now, this works. This is great. And if I were to go in and create another item, say a ABC 123, and we could call this a men's top hat, I could now drag in 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 or 100 pictures of men's top hats that would be pages in the album for this particular item. Let's go ahead and just drop in one. I don't have a picture of a man's top hat, but I do have a picture of a man wearing a top hat. Let's call that image number 1. I'm not going to worry about the date and time. And I think we have a second image of another gentleman, again, wearing a men's top hat. So here we see the elasticity of our photo album. We see that this item has 5 pages in the album. This item has 2. We need 5 pages because this one has more pictures than the other one. And we might even have a third item. And we might call this an XYZ, or in this case a ZYZ 111. And this could be men's formal shoes. And this record in inventory may have no items at all. So here we see how we can have multiple records in the parent table, but not waste space both in the size of our database and on the screen with image fields we do not need. There's one thing missing though. It would be very nice if we could have at least one image out of the photo album appear with the parent record, and we might call that our primary image or the number 1 image. This is the image that, if we have multiple images, this is the one out of the photo album that is most commonly associated with this particular item. Let me show you how to do that, because this is an easy and powerful feature that you can add to your dynamic or elastic photo albums. Again, let's go into administrative mode. Let's go into the photo album, just pull up one record and go to add field. And we're going to add a yes/no field. We're going to name this field primary image, convert it to a checkbox, size it down, and put it right up there on top. I will then go back to the multi-record listing, and I'm going to add that new field, the primary image field, to be the very first column in the multi-record display. One more thing I want to do real quickly. Let's go back into that record. Let's grab that field and let's make it a required field with a default value of no. Okay. Now, remember a couple of classes ago, we learned how we could modify many records with one action. Here in the photo album, we have 7 records. 5 of them associated with one piece of inventory, 2 of them associated with another piece of inventory, but all of them have primary image as blank. We want it to default to no. Instead of going through and changing every field, I'm just going to go in and update multiple records, go to primary image, select assign constant value, turn it on, and then turn it off, forcing the no value. Click next, confirm that no is now the default for all of those images, execute the update, and there we go. Now the reality is we don't even need to see our photo album outside of the individual pieces of inventory. You might want to have the photo album to see all of the pictures of all of your inventory in one place, or if you like, you can go ahead and hide the photo album. So the only way to access it is by going through the inventory table. One other thing might be an advantage, and that is to know which inventory items have pictures and how many. So I'm going to add one more field. I'm again going to go into administrative mode, click on the rightmost field in this screen record listing, which is the item description field. Click on show column, and we're going to show a formula. And the formula is going to be a count of all of the images that are associated with the photo album for this particular item. And as we see, the first item, MTC001, has 5 images. The men's top hat item has 2 images. The men's formal shoes, we didn't assign any images. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this column will be called number of images, and we'll want to have a sum at the bottom. So we can see at the bottom we have a total of 7 images in all of our photo albums, 5 associated with the first item, 2 associated with the second, and of course none associated with the third. Now let's get back to defining that primary image. I'm going to go in and we'll select the men's tailcoat, that first item, and let's go in and select this picture. This gentleman wearing the size XXL with the gray vest and the monocle. We're going to define that, and I'm going to turn administrative mode off. We're going to define that as the primary image among these 5 images. The other 5, as we indicated, default to no. And this one, the first image, is going to be set to yes. This is the image, the one out of the 5, that is associated with this particular item. Now we've defined the image, but what we want to do is have this image appear on this screen, on the item record screen, or the parent record screen as we see it here. Let's go ahead and do that now. To do this, we're going to go back into administrative mode, and we need a formula. And the formula is going to be this. Let the current record, or the variable to hold the pointer to the current record, equal the ID number of this record. Next, let's select the record in the photo album table where, and I'll just open this up to see all my fields, where the inventory field is equal to this current record and it is the primary image. We're going to go ahead and select that record, and I'm going to say let I equal that record. Finally, I want to display the image field of the record that is identified with the variable I. And just to be exact, we don't need those single parentheses because that field consists of one word. It's named with one word and no spaces. So I.image is this current record in the photo album table, the image field in that record. Let's again review. This is the ID of the inventory item that we're currently viewing. That is being stored in a variable called X, capital CURR, capital REC. This is the current record variable. I'm then defining a new variable called I, and I want I to point to the record in the photo album that is associated with this piece of inventory, and specifically, primary image is flipped to yes. We now have identified the key number, the identification number of this piece of inventory's primary image. This is the record of number of the primary image for this piece of inventory. We use the record indicator I, and then the name of the field in that record that we want to see. In this case, that is the image field. We click OK. I'm going to name this formula primary image, size it just like that. And since this is a formula, we can do a few fancy things. We can go in and we can put it on a background, maybe give it a white background, center the image, and give it a nice border around the image. There we go. Now you can see that the image we see on screen, and this is the screen that is showing us the item, this is the parent table, contains a view of the primary image in the child table. Let us say that we turn off this as our primary image, and we make this our primary image. Let's just have this view with the nice red vest. This becomes our primary image, and that is now the image that we see associated with the parent record. There's one thing we have to be careful of, though. What if we erroneously define two records as primary? Watch what happens if this third page in my photo album is set to primary, and the second page, the second image, is also set to primary. Well, now we have a problem because we have two records being identified. This one and this one. They're both images associated with this piece of inventory, and they're both being defined as primary. So I'm going to edit this formula just ever so slightly by adding one word, and that word is first. By entering this word first, we are saying the first record we find in this table that is associated with this piece of inventory, where the primary image field is equal to yes, that is the image we're going to point to, and that is the image we're going to display. So now we see, when we save our changes, even though two images have been selected, the first one it finds, this image here, is being set as the primary. If I turn this off and we're now back to only one image, then that is the one image that appears. And we can prove this by showing the first record as primary and the last page of our photo album also as primary. Two primary images. But because we indicated that the first primary image found for each piece of inventory will be the item picture displayed, we're seeing the first picture. Turn this off, and now with only one primary image, it's the last image that we see. And I'm going to go ahead and change this back to make this our primary image. Now what we can do is we not only can show the number of images on the screen listing, we also can show the primary image, or at least a thumbnail of it. Let's go into the men's top hats, and let's define this as the primary image for men's top hats. And there we have, again, a small thumbnail of the one image out of the 5 images for MTC01 and the 2 images for ABC123, the one image out of the multiple that is in fact the primary image. Now, you can use this data model, you can use this photo album format or template in any of your solutions. It's simply these two tables, a parent table with a photo album table. If you have pictures of equipment, pictures of real estate, pictures of employees, if you have a table in your database that has records of anything, and you want to add a photo album, an elastic photo album that allows you to optionally store one, none, or many photos with any or all of the records in that table, simply use this photo album table, and you only have to make a few changes. All you have to do is go into the photo album table and change this pointer. Maybe you have a database of pieces of equipment, and you want the photo album table to be a child of the equipment parent table. Delete this reference to inventory and replace it with a reference to your equipment table. Remember to do one thing though. When you do that, remember to go in and change the formula that we use to display the primary image. Go into the primary image field, which is a formula, and change the formula to make sure that all of your tables and all of your fields align. Here we are referring to the inventory field in the photo album table. If you have changed that and removed inventory and replaced it with fixed assets or employees or apartments, you want to make sure you change it here in the formula so that you will be able to see the primary image displayed on the parent table screen, or in this case, the parent table record form. And there's some nice things you can do. Now that we have this image stored as a formula, we can format the image, we can give it a background color, a border, all of these things which work very, very nicely. And since it obviously is an image, you may choose to hide the label and just let the image appear like that. This is how we create a photo album. Now remember, we started this in the first place because we didn't want to waste space having image fields that appeared when we didn't need them, when there were no images. Let's go in and look what that situation looks like now. If we go into the men's formal shoes, item ZYZ111, we still have a formula or a formula field taking up space that is not needed. There are no images in the photo album for this item, therefore there's no primary image, so we might want to add one more little trick. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, I'm in administrative mode, I'm going to select the formula field that presents our primary image, click on the wrench to go into the parameters of this field, and I'm going to use a small line of code to hide this field when there is no primary image or when there's no images at all. Let's see how we can do that. Let's go ahead and go into the display field only if function, and we'll write a little bit of code. Again, we will establish a variable called CURRREC, or current record, and that'll equal the ID of the current record. Then we are going to select out of the photo album table all records where, and again I'll just blow this up to see that it's called the inventory field, where the inventory field is equal to the current record that we are looking at right now. And we'll go ahead and place the end there. What I want to do is I not only want to select all of the records in the photo album that are associated with this piece of inventory and are defined as the primary image, I want to do one more thing. I want to count how many images that is. And I want that count to be stored in a variable called X. And then I'm going to say that X must be greater than 0 as the condition for this field to be displayed. Let's see how that works. We go in, we save our changes, and sure enough, for this particular piece of inventory, there's no formula field that would hold a primary image because there's no primary image. If, however, we go back to one of the other two items, that field appears because there is a primary image. Watch what happens if I go in and turn this to no. We have 5 images associated with this particular piece of inventory, but none of them are the primary. If I go back in and define one of those images as the primary, sure enough, the field appears with the primary image being displayed. Now, we aren't wasting space by setting up image fields that don't get used, and we're not wasting space by having a formula field set up to hold an image when there's nothing to hold, as we see in this item right here. No pages in the photo album, no images, certainly no primary images, so no space is wasted on the screen. So we not only have created an elastic photo album, an album that can expand or contract to be the perfect size for every record that it's associated with, but we also have created a primary image display system where primary images are displayed when they exist, but if they don't exist, no screen space is wasted and the database is not made unnecessarily large by having fields and content that we don't need. So that, folks, is how you can very quickly and easily build an elastic photo album that will grow or shrink to always be the perfect size. You won't have to lay out photo image fields that go unused. And in those situations where you have more images than fields, well, those situations won't exist anymore because you can just continue to add new pages to the photo album. And that's how we build photo albums in Ninox. Go ahead and download the photo album template from the Nioxus portal at www.nioxus.com. Play around with it. There's no password protection. All of the code is open and available. Go ahead and copy it into your Ninox solution and have fun with it. And remember, if you'd like us to do a training video here on the Ninox Learning Channel on a specific feature or function that is of interest to you that would help you with your database solutions, go ahead and shoot us an email at support@nioxus.com. And again, your idea could very well be our next training class. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you will get some use out of the elastic photo album, and I hope you'll come back and join us next week for the next in the 600 Solution series on the Ninox Learning Channel. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, folks.